Hello and welcome to episode 83 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. On today's show, Sarah Says will be here to give us a little preview of the D23 Expo 2022, which will take place from September 9th until the 11th in Southern California. Later, I'll be joined by Marissa from Chicago to continue our conversation about different ways Walt Disney World could incorporate more Star Wars into the parks. To hear the first part of that talk, check out episode 82. For our purposes today, it's important to know that Marissa had proposed creating an Endor land in Disney's Hollywood Studios, and that we talked about how this increase in Star Wars would be needed to compete with Universal Orlando Resort's upcoming new theme park, Epic Universe. There's way more detail on that episode, however, so make sure to go back eventually and give it a listen. Right now, let's turn things over to Sarah Says.
Thanks, Rick. Next week, the attention of all Disney Parks fans will turn to what is happening at Anaheim Convention Center for the D23 Expo 2022. Starting on September 9th and running through the 11th, D23 Expo 2022 will be the first time the biannual event has taken place since 2019. This year's version of the showcase has been pushed back from 2021 due to the pandemic. The expo will feature a number of panels throughout the course of the weekend. However, there are some particularly newsworthy events. On Friday, September 9th, Disney CEO Bob Chapek will be on hand for a ceremony honoring the most recent class of Disney legends. These include Anthony Anderson, Kristen Bell, Chadwick Boseman, Rob Coltrane, Patrick Dempsey, Robert Price, Bob Foster, Jonathan Groff, Don Hahn, Josh Gad, Doris Hardoon, Idina Menzel, Chris Montan, Ellen Pompeo, and Tracy Ellis Ross. More importantly, he is expected to have the first information for Disney 100, which will honor the 100th anniversary of the Walt Disney Company. Later in the day, fans can expect details on new offerings from Walt Disney Animation Studios, Pixar Animation Studios, and Disney Live Action. Saturday will bring information on upcoming projects from Marvel, Lucasfilm, and Disney-branded television. Fans will get sneak peeks from Disney Plus, Disney Channel, and Disney Junior, as well as the new Disney Plus original series National Treasure, American-Born Chinese, and The Santa Claus. For those of us who are obsessed with the theme parks, Sunday is going to be the highlight of D23 Expo 2022. Disney Parks, Experiences, and Products Chairman Josh D'Amaro will be announcing exciting happenings for the Disney theme parks throughout the world, Disney Cruise Line, and many other aspects of the company. It is quite possible that we can expect updates on the construction of Epcot, the opening of Tron at Magic Kingdom and Walt Disney World, and the expansions to Walt Disney Studios Park at Disneyland Paris Resort and Hong Kong Disneyland. It is unknown if there will be any information regarding the teased Disneyland Forward project. In past years, it was this panel where Disney announced major projects like Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and Avengers Campus. The expo will wrap up with Disney Princess The Concert, featuring a number of famous singers from Disney projects. Susan Egan was Broadway's original Belle in Beauty and the Beast, and may be more widely known as the voice of Megara in the animated Disney version of Hercules. Isabel McCalla has played Jasmine in the stage production of Aladdin. Nala from Broadway's Lion King, Sydney Winters, also gained a lot of attention from her work in Hamilton. Those are just 3 of the performers taking part in the finale of D23. Since we are anticipating a lot of news coming out of Anaheim for the weekend, Rick and Marissa will go over some of the biggest announcements that are made in an episode of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty, debuting on September 15th.
Thanks, Sarah. Back in June, I walked Ireland's National Famine Way to raise money and awareness in the fight against domestic violence. Every Monday from August 1st until Halloween, October 31st, I will be debuting a new vlog from my pilgrimage in Ireland on the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel to be up to date on everything we're doing for entertainment and for charity. We teamed up with CASA of Pinellas County, Florida for the fundraising aspect of this endeavor. Every single dollar donated will go directly to CASA so that they can continue to help survivors of domestic violence. I know I've talked about this a lot, but it is very, very, very important to me. Please consider donating $20 right now at casapinellas.org/walkwithrick/. That's CASAPINELLAS.org/walkwithrick/. It's my goal to end this fundraiser on October 31st and to have raised a ton of money to help survivors. As a community, we can do big things and dispel all of those misconceptions about, quote, Disney adults. Right now, it's time to welcome one of my favorite childless Disney adults, Marissa from Chicago. Thanks for being here, Marissa.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I know a rumor that has existed a lot for a number of years was turning Echo Lake, which is right over there by the Indiana Jones stunt show, 50s Primetime Cafe, of course, Gertie, the ice cream shop, turning that into Tatooine. And the big concern that you always had was that Tatooine would run right up to Star Tours, and then Galaxy's Edge was back there, and then they would get rid of Muppet's Courtyard. Now, let's just brainstorm here for a minute. Let's say you put Endor on the other end of the park, right over there by Tower of Terror. You have Launch Bay in the middle of the park still, and then you have Galaxy's Edge on the left side of the park. You no longer put Tatooine in Echo Lake. Now, since Muppet's Courtyard is safe, and you have Indiana Jones over in Echo Lake, all of a sudden you're not worried that Star Tours is going to become part of a bigger Star Wars situation. Now it becomes almost redundant, almost too much Star Wars, and it's kind of separated from all the other Star Wars stuff. Do you get rid of Star Tours? And if you do, how do you replace it?
So here's the super controversial answer. Yeah, get rid of Star Tours. I don't like it. I know a lot of people love it. I feel like it's outdated. I feel like I would rather see that kind of model of multiple missions you're going on. I'd rather see that applied to Smuggler's Run. I think you've got a better vehicle for that, quite literally.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to say that you get rid of Star Tours and you make that an Indiana Jones ride. Now, all of a sudden, you have an Indiana Jones section of the park. Backlot Express, the quick service location in between Star Tours and Indiana Jones, has some decent food, actually. Don't sleep on it. It's actually an okay quick service location. However, you could easily theme that to Indiana Jones. Now, it's not just a Star Wars park. It's almost a Lucasfilm and Pixar park. It's the acquired properties park. And I think Indiana Jones has the staying power. Now, we might need to see how well this new Indiana Jones movie performs at the box office, but I don't even think that's going to matter. Like, Indiana Jones is a popular IP. People will go visit those lands just for the movies they've already seen. And if you make the Indiana Jones ride in Hollywood Studios half as good as the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland, you have made Hollywood Studios a theme park that would at least be close to what we're hearing they're going to have at Epic Universe. No, not everything's going to be new. It's not going to be the perfect rebuttal to Epic Universe, but if you have that roller coaster in Endor, and then you have Rise of the Resistance, Mickey and Minnie's, Toy Story Mania, Slinky Dog Dash, and now the Indiana Jones ride, that's a theme park right there. That is a park with a lot to do on a day. I think you've fixed not only Disney's Star Wars problem, but their Hollywood Studios problem. That's not an easy task. I do want to touch on another thing that you said, and that's the missions on Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run have to change. This was something that was sort of teased when Galaxy's Edge was being opened, and they have never really addressed it anytime since then. But that is a very, very stale mission for anybody who's done it twice. And I've done it probably in the 30s or 40s of times. So at this point, I just don't do it anymore. I don't ride the ride. And if people aren't riding Smuggler's Run, then basically the only reason they're going to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is for Rise of the Resistance, and you're not pulling people back into that section of the park.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, I've done Smuggler's Run 3 or 4 times, and I think that part of my concern with the ride is how it's set up where the people you're with makes such a huge difference to your ride experience and so greatly impacts that. And I think that's a really big gamble for any ride in a theme park to take, especially, when you have it as one of two attractions in a land and you're betting on it eating so many people. But we can't change that. We can't do anything about that. So at least make it more exciting and enticing to people who have done it a few times or people who, are in smaller parties and usually end up as the engineers. By bringing those new missions in and making it be something like Star Tours, where you don't know what the mission you're being sent on is. You don't know where you're flying through. So at least you get a little bit of variation and a little bit more encouragement to go back and ride it again after your 4th time or 40th time.
The big problem with Star Tours is that it can definitely make you motion sick. Even if you don't really get motion sickness, this can really, really hit you. I know the one time right after the parks reopened in July of 2020, the line for Star Tours was so short that I rode it, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hop right back on it. And doing it 2 times in a row almost destroyed me. Like, it was bad. I had to sit down for a good hour and just kind of decompress. However, what I do love about Star Tours is that the mission changes. That when you're about to get your mission, a character pops up on the screen and people will cheer depending on which character you get. Like, if it's Leia, everybody cheers when Leia shows up there. If it's Poe, a lot of the women and a good portion of the men as well go absolutely crazy. It is really fun how they can take that ride that has existed for so long. I remember going on it when I was a little kid. And now they've added these multiple missions, which provides an incentive to ride it more than once. Now, the problem is it makes you sick, so you can't ride it more than once. You transfer that over to Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, and you might get people getting in line 2-3 times.
Absolutely. And then you can just bulldoze Star Tours and make it Indiana Jones, which is something that I would lobby for anyway right now with the state of the park, because I think Indiana Jones deserves way more than just the stunt show. I think that the ride over in Disneyland is one of the best rides in all the US parks. So I think if, like you said, they can do something that's even remotely like that, that would be huge. That would be such a big draw to the park. And then, getting on my little soapbox here, you get rid of Star Tours.
Disney tries to be as inclusive as humanly possible. They want to make sure that almost anybody can ride their rides. There's a big problem at Universal with a lot of their rides not being accommodating for bigger people. I'm 6'4". I'm looking at you, Universal. Disney always tries to make them more accessible. Disney has roller coasters where you don't have to put your bag in a locker. You can bring your bag with you on the roller coaster. They're always trying to make things more and more accessible, and with the state of Star Tours right now, it's just not. It makes way too many people sick. I have been on Star Tours too many times where that hallway has a caution wet floor sign on it, and we all know why. With the state of Hollywood studios right now, a ride that a lot of people can't ride for physical reasons is a luxury they can't afford.
Yeah, the lines right now are out of control, and it's very, very telling that Star Tours is consistently the one thing in Hollywood studios that has under like a 25-minute wait almost all the time. And yeah, it's great if you're someone who does like Star Tours, because then there's one ride you really don't have to wait for. But the fact is, so many people are avoiding that ride because either they can't do it, or they don't want to do it, or someone in their party doesn't want to do it, so then no one does it. That if you have a ride that's always that low with wait times, all that means is that entire queue full of people are in other lines, making all those other lines that much longer. So I think, like you said, that's something that they have to change. They can't have that right now.
And getting back over to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, something I don't think we addressed, it was sold to us as a bigger land, as a land with a few more options. Now, there was going to be a ride that was essentially free roaming animals from the Star Wars universe, and you were going to be able to ride them. I don't know how they ever thought that was going to work logistically. And even some of the droids we were promised walking around Galaxy's Edge or rolling around Galaxy's Edge, they determined that that wasn't safe. It wasn't feasible to do that all of the time. I understand why we didn't get that ride. What I don't understand is why we didn't get the sit-down restaurant that was going to have a show. I think that is imperative. Ronto Roasters, that is a great quick service. Walk up, mobile order your Ronto wrap. Docking Bay 7 is a passable quick service location as well. You have the milk stand and you have Oga's Cantina. All of those are great, but this land needs a sit-down restaurant. All of a sudden, you have that sit-down restaurant, and they're already adding the Toy Story barbecue restaurant in Toy Story Land. You add those two restaurants, you're going to keep taking more and more people out of the park. You're going to add another experience. Look at how hard it used to be to get an Oga's reservation. Look at how hard it was to get a reservation to make a $200 lightsaber or a $100 droid. You could have an expensive restaurant with a show that is going to now be a prime reservation for people, and it will make it easier for other people to get into Oga's. Maybe it'll make it easier for people to get Sci-Fi Dine-In. Disney's gonna make money from that because it's a restaurant. It will be a signature restaurant. I think that's the absolute first thing that needs to happen.
I think that's an absolute no-brainer. And it's something that we know Disney has experience with. We know Disney has a template for because we see these kinds of, restaurants with a show. I mean, you see it in the parks with like Hoop-Dee-Doo or in Disney World with Hoop-Dee-Doo. But you also see them have these more like story-driven immersive dining experiences on things like their cruise lines or on the Starcruiser. They have the ability to kind of take something like that and put it in the park where you're eating and it becomes this whole experience. And that's really going to draw people in. I mean, imagine the fans who want to be in that immersive world. They're going to eat there. Parents are going to want to eat there with their kids who are Star Wars obsessed. Is going to be a huge deal. I think that, it's one of those things that is kind of mind-blowing that they haven't done it.
And we've mentioned the Galactic Starcruiser a number of times. If you don't know, this is the Star Wars hotel that is shaping up more like it is a cruise, but in a hotel that doesn't actually set out to sea. You are sort of flying through the galaxy on this ship. We talked about the timeline of Galaxy's Edge. It kind of was a little weird because apparently they've had Han and Leia on the Galactic Starcruiser, but then you make a stop on Batuu. So it is kind of messing with that timeline. But this is something that, and Marissa and I often say that we are spoiled Disney fans. But we ain't this spoiled. It's like $5,000 for a weekend, and I am pretty sure, I know I'm not paying that, and I'm pretty sure Marissa isn't paying that either. What do you think is going to be the future of the Galactic Starcruiser? I don't think it's sustainable that this is going to be a $5,000 a weekend experience until the end of time. I think the people who have the money to do it are going to do it over the first few years, but then this might become something that gets incorporated into the overall Star Wars experience. I don't think we're ever getting a discount on the Starcruiser, but I could see the Starcruiser being included in a bigger package that all of a sudden makes it a lot cheaper and a lot more affordable for families because it's not sustainable, and people are going to start getting upset that all of the things they were promised in Galaxy's Edge are only available for this upcharge on the Starcruiser.
Yeah, and it's a pretty significant upcharge too. I mean, I've of course looked at it, and I mean, I could go on a real cruise that actually goes somewhere for cheaper than the Star Cruiser, which is just, a building outside Hollywood Studios. I do think that it has a very small, finite pool of people that it can draw from. And we're going to see those people going over the first couple years, and we'll probably see those people saying that they will go back in a couple years. But I think by the time that couple years rolls around, it's going to be updated in some way. And I think your point about it being part of a larger package is the most realistic thing that's going to happen. I would love to see it become just a regular hotel. Like, just make it a regular hotel where I can come and go as I please. I can explore. I can, choose to do missions on the ship if I want. But it's not like, you're locked into, you have to spend 3 days essentially LARPing in this hotel where your only excursion is to Batu, and that's $6,000 for 3 days for one person. So I think it would have been more sustainable if they had created just a hotel, kind of like how Epic Universe seems to be doing with the hotel they're building there, which is right outside the park gates. I think, kind of turning it into something like that where you get exclusive entry into Hollywood Studios with less lines could be an appealing thing without it being, locked into this super expensive weekend.
And when you say you could go on a cruise for cheaper than this, you could go on a cruise for much, much, much cheaper than this. And this isn't the kind of thing where a bunch of friends could get together and say, hey, why don't we do this? You basically have to be a family, like a nuclear family. Because I couldn't say, hey, Marissa, why don't you and I, and we'll get Sarah, and we'll all get together like we were going to get a cabin at Fort Wilderness or one of the suites at Art of Animation. You're like in a small area. I don't even know if you would feel comfortable going with like your cousin. Like you would be like smushed together in this tiny area. So it's only going to be nuclear families. And I can't even imagine that that's great, smushing brothers and sisters in the same cabin. I don't want to put down the Galactic Starcruiser, especially because I haven't done it. Everybody I've heard who has done it says it is amazing. I know some of those people paid for it. I know some of those people were comped it. So it's hard to gauge exactly how great it is, but what I know is there are enough drawbacks to it that it is unattainable for Marissa. It is unattainable for me. And I'm going to let you know that when it comes to disposable income for people to spend on Disney, we're actually in a pretty good spot compared to most people.
Yeah, it's hard to justify that price for myself personally. And like you said, a lot of people have gone and loved it and have said that they're going to go again, whether they were comped for their first trip and they said they'll spend the money to go again. But I think for myself, that's money that I could do a lot of other things with, including like going abroad somewhere, or again, going on a real cruise, or even if I just wanted to stay local in quotes, I could take so many Disney trips with that money that it kind of, for me, doesn't feel worth it. Now, if that's something that appeals to you and you want to go do the Star Cruiser, have at it, have fun, and enjoy every second, because that's awesome. It's just not something that I find particularly appealing. And I know part of that's the price. I know part of that is dietary things. And I know part of that is the fact that I would essentially be acting for 3 days straight. And that's not something that I think I have the energy for. But again, if you do, that's awesome.
And I just wonder if the Starcruiser, is it ever going to play a bigger part in the overall Star Wars story in Walt Disney World? because a lot of resources went into Galactic Starcruiser. There are a lot of bells and whistles that are behind this firewall that once Epic Universe opens for the price of a theme park ticket, Disney might want to find a way to give some of these things without the paywall so that they can get more people to avoid making their trip more and more about Universal. This is not us trashing the Starcruiser because we're not negative people in general. I think there is a place for those higher end experiences because they do help pay for things for those of us who don't want to pay for the higher end experiences. The Grand Floridian has funded a lot of things that I get to experience at Walt Disney World without ever having to pay to stay at the Grand Floridian. But once you start pricing people out to that extent and you're putting stuff that could be in the theme park in these hotels, I think that's when you start running into some of the problems. When you start putting characters in the Starcruiser that you can't meet in the parks, then you start to create that divide. And Disney has almost a monopoly still, even with Velocicoaster, even with the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. But Epic Universe is going to take a big crack at that monopoly. And all of a sudden, Disney is going to want to find ways that they can start giving you more free stuff. I don't necessarily always believe that a rising tide raises all boats, but it certainly does in the world of theme parks.
Oh, yeah. I think that that's one of the best things about being a fan of both Universal and Disney is that you really benefit from either park making something new. You know, you get both of them trying to kind of one up each other all the time. And the fans are always the winners because we're the ones getting new things, new technology, new immersive experiences, and making our park trips that much more fun. And I do think in terms of Galaxy's Edge, they are kind of in trouble in that little Batuu space in the sense that they can't really put roaming droids around because they don't have space for it. It's, you know, the walkways already get pretty jammed up. You don't really have room to put a droid and gather crowds, which is why I think expanding into another area, you know, you could potentially build with that in mind. Even if you build a little section where there's a droid, you know, behind a little fence, so people can't really interact with it, but it can interact with the surroundings. And maybe that's where you bring in that Magic Band Plus technology, where you wave at the droid and it waves back. And, you know, there's something special and interactive about that kind of experience. I think that goes a long way in kind of improving the atmosphere in these lands.
I think if they had it to do over again in Galaxy's Edge, above the people, there would be tracks where they could run some of these droids. If they were thinking about how it would interfere with people walking and people could trip on them, and as anybody who's worked with the public, if somebody can trip on something, they're gonna trip on something. But if you're building a new section like an Endor, you could have some of the technology like they use to keep the animals separate on Kilimanjaro Safari. You could have a trench with droids in it that looks like you can get to it, that looks like it's on the same level as you, but it's actually a trench that you can't reach, and you're just watching the droids move back and forth. I think they would have done that in Galaxy's Edge had they thought of it. They're probably kicking themselves for it now because you often see the stormtroopers up there. You'll often see Rey and Chewbacca up there because it's a way to keep that interaction visible by everybody, but not clogging up the walkways, which, like you said, is a big problem everywhere in Walt Disney World, in every theme park, honestly. So those were a lot of good observations, actually, and I do think that there are ways to even improve on Galaxy's Edge, even if you keep the timeline. But when it comes to a fifth gate, which is what everybody is talking about as Disney's response to Epic Universe. And in a couple weeks at D23, I know so many people are waiting for a fifth gate. I don't think that's possible at Walt Disney World until they have some sort of resolution with the Marvel properties. Because if you can't do Marvel, I don't think you can carry a fifth gate. Now, if you can do Marvel, and then you can have a Marvel land and a brand new Star Wars land, all of a sudden you're starting to put together, maybe you throw Arendelle in there. Maybe you throw Corona in there. Then all of a sudden there are things to do with traditional Disney IPs and then some of these other things. I know they're dying to get Wakanda anywhere in the Disney theme parks. But until there is a resolution with Marvel, I think we're stuck with 4 theme parks at Walt Disney World.
I totally agree. I think that the topic of the fifth gate comes up all the time, and there really is no clear answer of what they could build outside of getting those Marvel rights, because you really don't have enough to build a whole themed park. You know, a lot of things are like, okay, well, you could add that onto Magic Kingdom, or okay, you could add that onto Epcot. But what do you center a whole new park around? And I think Marvel is really something that you could. You know, you could have that Stark Tower with the A on it as a park icon. You could have some sort of ride in the tower or some sort of experience. You can really bring a lot of Marvel into there and really make it like this whole little area that otherwise, what theme do you have? That can be a whole park. You really don't have a whole park worth of things that's a distinct park from what you already have. And so, yeah, I don't think we'll be getting a fifth gate announcement anytime soon. I would love to be wrong. I would love for them to get up at D23 and be like, surprise, here's a new park and this is what we're doing, because I think that would be great. But I think for the time being, it's much more realistic to think we'll just get little add-ons here and there to the 4 parks we already have.
I have about 8 more things I want to discuss, but I think we're going to do another episode at some point where we start talking about the possibilities of a fifth gate. Until then, thank you so much for joining us, Marissa.
Thanks for having me, and let me do a little armchair imagineering.
For Marissa from Chicago and Sarah Says, I'm Rick Doherty, and this has been episode 83 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Sarah will be back on the show next Thursday when we will start a brand new conversation about what are the best rides to rope drop at all 6 of the U.S. Disney theme parks. What rides are worth getting out of bed early instead of getting those precious extra hours of sleep on your vacation? Find out next Thursday. Until then, have a great week.